Shall we start?
Yes.
Okay. So once upon a time, in a Swedish winter, it was pitch black, dark. I was traveling from Stockholm to Hudiksvall with my family after a long day of fun activities. So it was pitch black. And there was a truck coming from the other side. The truck driver suddenly lit up all of its light. It was too much of light, and you might think that the driver did the wrong thing. But in fact, he did the right thing. And the reason was that because of those lights, I was able to see a man wearing black clothes walking in middle of this E4 highway. My speed was 120 kilometers per hour. And fortunately, I was able to stop and avoid a fatal accident. And the same is valid for organizations. So we need to have organizations who have well-functioning organs and also well-functioning connections. If we don't have any of these connections or do have problem with those connections, then we can end up in a fatal accident. And this is all this presentation is about. I would like to say hello. My name is Tahir Qureshi. I have a PhD in cyber physical systems, embedded system you can call it, or Internet of Things. It has different names, which I did back in 2012 from KTH in Stockholm. Then I moved to Hiab in Hudiksvall, and there I have been working with many different responsibilities, doing research in my own field, developing processes, managing safety, and that means ensuring that the process is followed and the machines are safe. And last but not least, a lot to do with new innovations and innovation management. So after HIAP, I went back to KTH, where I'm now working as a program leader at a research center called Integrated Transport Research Lab. And there I'm leading the program called End-to-End Freight Transport, which is related to transport system, logistics, and goods transport. And in that program, we are dealing with everything like digitalization, business models, infrastructure, you name it, we have it related to sustainable transport system. And in addition to my professional activities, I do some volunteer work and also like to have some adventures. So here you can see me flying a glider plane over Eustal's commune. And hopefully I will get a license by the end of this July. So I'm keeping my finger crossed.
Hello, everyone. I am Afifa Rahatulain, and improving organizations through knowledge management is one of my passions. Did my PhD last year from production engineering department at KTH. And since 2013, I am associated with the Senseair, which is in Delsu. And all of you who are from Hudiksvall may be aware of it. So at Senseair, I have been on different roles from research to production development to work environment, and currently working with the Digital Transformation Initiative. And as a volunteer, I'm also affiliated with the Project Management Institute Sweden chapter. So, and we have recently started the Region Node network. So if there are any project management managers here who are affiliated with PMI, so you will see me more often in the coming months. So when I started at Senseair in 2013, I was an industrial PhD student, and the focus of my research was on fourth industrial revolution and the technical aspects related to that. And when I dig deeper into this area and started to find the challenges that the companies face in the adoption of these technical advancements, what I realized was that the rate of technological advancement does not really match the rate of organizational evolution. And by organizational evolution, we mean human development, knowledge management, capability of organizations, and so on. So at that time, I changed my focus of research from just technical aspects towards socio-technical aspects of organizations. And this is where I end up doing my PhD last year. The results that or the presentation of today is mainly based on the research results from this thesis, which we have developed over the years and made it more refined and applicable for the organizations in practice. What you will get from this seminar, why you should listen to it, is in the beginning, we will bore you with a brief, some basic concepts, and then we will go to going to discuss about how you can take it to your organizations and apply it to your organizations practically. And finally, we will end with a demonstration for a real case. If you have any questions in between, you can just write it in the chat, or we will answer it at the end of the presentation. So the situation, the story that Tahir mentioned in the beginning of this presentation about the man walking on a highway in Sweden, it's very rare. Let us consider a more familiar situation for Swedish road environments. Suppose you're going on E4, driving on a high-speed highway, and suddenly an elk appears in front of you from nowhere. Now, what you have to do, you have to react to that situation. And for reacting, you need some knowledge. You need to have the knowledge of your braking distance, what is the condition of your car, what are the road conditions, and so on. And based on that available knowledge, your brain will take a decision. And you may either end up in a car crash, or you may drive safely through the situation and the elk will be also safe. But what is important here is it's not only the knowledge that you have, but also how you take that knowledge and how good is the coordination and interfaces between your sensing, controlling, and actuating mechanisms. And that is really important. That is similar, is applicable for organizations too. In organizations also, we have emergent situations. And what can be the emergent situations for organizations? So if we consider that story of a man walking on a highway, that is a rare situation. And if we try to make it parallel to the current situation of caused by the pandemic, that is also a rare situation, which the organizations are facing, and they have to react to it. They have to respond and adjust to it. Now, what could be the other more familiar emergent situations for organizations? There are trends, emerging trends like Fourth Industrial Revolution. We have to meet the sustainability goals. Then there could be some business objectives. You have to move your production to a new place. You have to develop a new production line. Or there could be new market opportunity where you have to develop a new product. And all these could be new for any organization. And for this, you need to have some knowledge again. You have to, in organizations, the knowledge could be related to the products, the projects going on, the services that the company organization provides, et cetera, et cetera. But when we talk about organizational knowledge, before going further, let us consider some facts related to organizational knowledge. So according to a survey, about 60% of the available knowledge is inaccessible in organization. And 20% of an employee's time is lost in searching for the available information. Moreover, when a person leaves a company, he or she may take about 42% of knowledge with them. And that is quite a lot. According to the Swedish Design and Technique Företagen, the employee turnover rate, that is the rate with which the employees are changing their jobs in the past couple of years, is quite high. It's about 20%. And that in turn into quite high when you look at the knowledge when is lost with one person. And in another survey, when the people were asked the reason for leaving their jobs, about 78% of them cited frustration due to knowledge issues. And this is where organizations lie today. When they have to deal with such situations, they have to come up with solutions. They have to manage the complexity, and the complexity even grows further when there is some emergent situation. So what organizations usually do to manage knowledge in such cases, they add tools. You may be aware that in your organization, you have a lot of tools for project management, operations, document management, et cetera, et cetera. Now, to ensure that you're not sleeping at this point, so I will just try to wake you up. If you have access to your mobile phones or internet browser, you can go to menti.com and use the code 72985683, and please answer the first question. Or you can also access the page directly from the QR code, scanning the QR code here. I'll just give you 1 minute to answer the question. It's a very simple question.
Can you put back the code again?
Yes, 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 I will do that. So, I hope it's visible now.
Yes, thank you.
So now we have about 11 answers. We'll wait a bit. Quite interesting results we see there. Think we have around 2 more, waiting for 2 more answers, or we can, Tahir, you can take the floor.
Yes, so here we can see a lot of interesting results. Most of you have answered 20 to 50, which can be true. So there is no wrong answer, I would say, in this one. But let's look at what does the statistic says. So if you
A bit, yes.
Yes. So according to statistics, an organization on the average has 91 digital tools. So that's the average. So you can have more than the 91 tools or even less than it, but this is the average. But what's common in organizations, independent of the number of tools, is the fact that these tools are often disconnected and sometimes they have some overlap. So far, so good. There are organizations who are doing really good, but at the same time, having these tools and so much of this complexity can lead to a situation which is called a fool with a tool syndrome. So we have to use these tools wisely. And this happens quite frequently in an organization. So you might be able to relate it from your organization as well. So far we have discussed the challenges that an organization can have in terms of emergent situations. We discussed a little bit about knowledge and its related issues and what can go wrong to a very limited extent. So what we need to do is to have good interfaces, as emphasized by Afifa in the beginning. And now you might also think that, well, we do have good interfaces, well-defined communication channels in an organization. So what do we actually mean by these interfaces and communication channel? So let's look at how an structural hierarchy looks like in an organization. So it can be like this. There are organizations which do have flat hierarchy. And with this thing in your mind, think about what kind of hierarchy does your organization have? And try to answer these questions. These are 5 questions. Who is making the policy? Who is doing the coordination between different organizational units? Who is controlling or giving directions? Who is monitoring the organization, the health of the organization and status of everything? And who is on the watch, looking for the external things, these emergency cases? And up till now, you might have thought of some names, maybe some people or group of persons and so on. But now I will show you another picture. So in addition to a structural hierarchy, we also have a communication hierarchy prevalent in an organization. So it might look like the one on the figure on the right, or it might be same as the structural hierarchy. So now think of your organization again and try to answer who makes the policy, who is doing coordination, who is doing monitoring, control, and who is on the watch. And by showing you this figure, the point that we want to emphasize is that we need to focus on functions and interfaces at the same time when we are dealing with roles and hierarchy. But how do we do it? Well, there is a well-proven scientific method developed by a scientist called Stafford Beer. He was very famous in using cybernetics theory for organizations. And what he came with a theory called viable system model. And by viable system, we mean any system which can adapt to external changes and also evolve during the course of time. And this system is so powerful that it can be utilized for small organizations, a part of organization, or even the whole organization or the whole government. So in this picture, you see a control room developed for the Chile government back in 1970s with only one computer and limited technology. And they managed to get something which is like similar to connected factories that we are aiming for in today, 2021. And the project was called CyberScene. This was so powerful that there was a strike. 400,000 trucks went on a strike. But even then, the government was able to give supplies to the factories with only 200 trucks, thanks to those interfaces and those connections that were available. And this viable system model has actually explicitly defined functions for policy, coordination, control, monitoring, and watching, which is called intelligence in the function. And this is a recursive model. So you can have the same kind of model for one organization, and then you can go recursively down into different hierarchies.
Now let's have a look at how those functions are defined by a viable systems model and how they look like in our organizations. So as you may relate, any organization has two main functions, management function and the operations. But in addition to that, there is also an environment element, which is external to the organization, but it is reacting to this organization. And the environment in turn has two elements, known element, which is the normal road conditions in our example, and they are dealing with the daily operations. We have a local management who's taking care of the daily routine operations. And so far so good, everything is working fine until there is an emergent situation. And when that happens, for example, a new product or a market opportunity, and according to Stafford Beer, every organization that is capable of existing or that is existing that is viable has an intelligence function, which takes this information from the external environment and feeds into the internal system, into the internal management responsible for policy making and the control that is giving the directions to the operational units. And in addition, there are two other functions which are available in every viable organization of today. Is a monitoring function, which looks at the status of the operational units. And then there is a coordination function, which helps in the conflict resolution between the operational units. And then we have defined interfaces between them. Now, what is important to consider here is that this monitoring and coordination act as a feedback loop between the operational units and the management. So it is the internal feedback loop. And this intelligence function provides an external feedback loop. So feedback loop is the basis of the viable systems theory, that there has to be a feedback loop in order to remain viable and to continue its operations smoothly. And every organization has these functions. So maybe wondering then what is the problem? The problem lies that these functions may be explicitly defined or may not be explicitly defined. And when they're not explicitly defined, what happens is that we miss those interfaces. So we will see later in the presentation what is the effect of missing interfaces and what problems they cause. But that is important, that by defining and clearly identifying these functions in an organization, we can define interfaces, and when we can define knowledge which would be shared, which is required to be shared between these interfaces. Moreover, as Tahir said, it is a recursive model. You can apply it to the top level of your organization, where this policy making may be a group of management system, management people, And it could be applied to the lower level of an organization. It could be a team of people who are working and they also have the same functions in principle. Another important thing to consider here that viable system model is not about adding another change into the system, not changing your organization, but to understanding your existing organization to react to the changes that are coming. So let us take a pause again, because I think it's a very complex model and it would take time to grasp it. So let us take a break. Pick up your phones and go to Menti, scan the code and answer the second question. Think of the model and see which of these functions are missing in your organization or are not explicitly defined in your organizations. We'll just share the other screen. You can use the code 72985683. This may require a little bit thinking, so I need to shut up and let you think. Just wait a little bit more so we can have more answers. I think 2 or 3. So I think it's, yeah. Can start. I think
Yes, well, these are really interesting results, and also to some extent also matches the research findings. So here we see most of you pointed out to monitoring and coordination are very less on intelligence, but there are also people who are stating don't know. So that's also a sign of something that we can think about, some things which needs to be explicit. So if you move back to the presentation again.
yes.
Yes, and according to the research, the coordination function is the one which is missing in most of the organizations, but the interfaces can be missing at any part. So now let's look at what can go wrong if you don't have a particular interface. So let's start with a scenario where you have an emergent situation. For example, there is a new product opportunity for a manufacturing company. This is actually realized by intelligence function, and the intelligence function provides this information to the policy and control. And they will try to make appropriate decisions, maybe say go ahead for it or whatsoever. And to make the right decision, they also need to know what's going in the operations. And by what this, the information that need can be the ongoing projects, how critical they are, what kind of competence do we have on board, do we need new competence, how will we develop those competence, and so many things that is required to make the right decisions. And this is going through the interface between monitoring and control. So if we don't have this interface, then obviously it will result to some kind of ill-informed decision making. Or maybe there will be decisions which will be too delayed so that we don't get the right market opportunity or we miss it. And there can be another situation where the interface might not be missing, but is wrongly connected. So for example, here on the top, you can see a connection between policy and control. And let's say that we don't have this connection. Instead, the policy is directly doing some kind of control for operations. And now you can probably guess what it will lead to. It is something which is referred to as micromanagement. And due to these things, it might lead to more subsequent effects like disengage employees, frustration, maybe silos in kind of projects and so on. And most importantly, what it can result is that the organizations tend to run on assumptions and intuitions. But things don't have to be like this.
So we have developed a 5-step process based on the viable system model and the research results. And just to remember the name of the model, you can consider it with the Swedish words OEI model, but it is not the cause of OEI, but the prevention of OEI in an organization. So this model suggests a step process suggests that the first step is onboarding, and onboarding is can be done by game-based learning, online learning platforms, workshops, and seminar. And onboarding organization is to make the people aware of the problem and to understand, and so that the employees can understand the problem. And what is important here is that it is not only for managers, but also for employees. It is also to engage the employees, because you may all relate to a situation when when the companies hire consultants to identify the problems in a company, and the consultants have to take the information out from the employees. They have to interview the employees. But what is the problem here? That the managers know why they hire the consultants, but the employees don't know them. They don't have any motivation to share the information. They don't know what will be the results. Why are they hiring consultants? What is the problem? So onboarding organization is the process that is often missed, and I think it's a very important step to add first. Then there is step 1, which is the identification, and it's related to organizational diagnosis. Here is when you have onboarded the organization and the employees. Here is where you start interviewing the employees and asking them, and it's related to data collection, finding the existing state of the organization, where your organization lies. Then step 2 is adoption, which is related to the mapping of the roles and hierarchies of the organization to the VSM functions and hierarchy interfaces. Here you can also define the interface, identify the existing interfaces, what is present, what is not present, identify the gaps, which knowledge is currently shared, and what is required to be shared. After performing these 2 steps, then we are finally in a stage where we can start thinking of automating, and that is related to organizational development. Here you can start integrating your existing tools, or may start thinking if you need a knowledge management tool. It is there to help the organization. The first 2 steps, but it cannot go directly to the 3rd step. Here, in this step, you can also think about creation of knowledge bases after we have established the interfaces to share those information and for utilization of that knowledge. Then the 4th step is the continuous improvement process. We just have to repeat the process, iterate, identify, adopt, identify the gaps, automate, and improve. So the cycle continues. But once again, it is important to take the organizations on board first before applying this process. So to give an example of a game that we developed for case of onboarding organizations, it's a very simple knowledge game based on the concept of game-based learning. And the objective is to stimulate the thinking that how your decisions related to knowledge management may have consequences for your resources, for your cost in, for example, a project. So this is how you onboard organizations, for example.
So now coming to a real life example. So what we did was we try to implement this thing on a real life situation in a real case. And what we did was the first step to identify where can we actually start with. And then we said, okay, it's a big organization, so we'll start with a small department. The department consisted of 16 persons. And after this kind of identification and what kind of information is being shared, the second step was adoption. Try to relate whatever is being done at the company to VSM model and see what is missing and what can be added. And after doing this step, the third step is automation, trying to see if we can make those information exchanges a little bit more automated and also provide something extra. And that extra thing that we have provided is a dashboard, which you can see here. So every person in the team can get the same kind of dashboard, but the information will be different for different persons, depending on their roles in the organization and the function they are associated with in this viable system model. So here you can see a manager. He or she can get 3 rows like status, actions, and information. The most important thing is the status, where he or she is able to get quick status of what's happening. Not only what's happening in the organization, but also what she's supposed to do. For example, act on some kind of policy which the higher management has introduced, or some kind of unresolved issues. And in addition to that one, the most important thing from VSM point of view is this assign and revoke functions. What that leader can do is he or she can assign functions as well as the department parts in the same window. And with this one, it's possible to delegate the task at the same time keeping the viability aspect intact. So if there is someone who is getting more and more responsibilities, then it's simply to have this kind of process and you will have the required information for the new role and new function already in place. Then the second thing is that we all know organizations are made of people and people are different. They are introverts who don't usually say many things, but have really good things to say. They are extroverts who dominate many things and sometimes they need to be somehow stopped to some extent. And then also we have people who are very organized, doing things very properly, but some things, there are people who need reminders. And this system has all of them. For example, if there is a person who has a really nice idea that can be a new market opportunity, or maybe something going wrong in that department or in production line or whatsoever, so that person can be a sort of a horn blower, give the idea, and thanks to the interfaces which we showed to you before, it will reach to the right function. And due to these kind of reminders and these things, it will be acted upon. Action will be taken for sure. Last but not least, it's also the information which is readily available for everyone. So now I will try to conclude the presentation. We have discussed emergent situations. We have discussed knowledge and issues related to knowledge. And at the same time, the main point is that knowledge alone is not enough. We need good interfaces and connections. And now for you who are in the audience, you have 2 choices. Either you choose to go for a crashing situation, or you can take your organization to a smooth ride, avoiding these accidents and reacting on the new emergent situations. So if you choose the smooth running way, then we are here to help. And we can be contacted via email or by connecting through LinkedIn. And with this one, I will first like to thank Propel to giving us the opportunity to present this idea and this work, and also all of you who are there who took our time to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, Propel, and everyone who listens to our presentation. Hope it sounds something better. So if you have any questions, you can ask directly, or you can send them on the chat, or if you want to give some anonymous feedback, then you can go to menti.com using the same code and give some feedback there. But you're very welcome to ask questions here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tahir and Afifa.
Thank you.
Is there any questions? Someone to dare to ask directly?
Is it possible to get your presentation?
Yes, I think so. We can discuss that. Definitely.
Okay.
No problem.
If it's okay for you, I can send it out to everyone who has attended the meeting.
Yeah, I think I have one of the questions. So I think first of all, thank you so much. And this was a really valuable information. And when I look at the knowledge management, I think one of the key factor or one of my key observation, like looking into many different organizations in my consulting experience, is one thing is, yeah, it is like one factor is that knowledge management, that is for sure. But I think another most important thing is the cultural thing. Like people don't usually adopt to those knowledge management and don't usually go to look at those knowledge management tools unless they are like unless those controls are being set on top of the knowledge management as well. So I think one of my observation is not a question directly, but like one of my observation is that all of this model should be encapsulated with the cultural side as well. How can we enable that culture within any of the organization, where we have some of the introvert people as well working in the organizations, they start to utilize that particular information. So one of the missing component that I see over here is the cultural side of things.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. Yes, so that is an interesting thing that we can look further into. But again, having established interfaces is an attempt to take that part or like cover that part area. So once you have established interfaces, because again, knowledge alone is not enough, you have to utilize it unless it's not valuable. And that is, thank you.
True.
Stina.
Yeah. Stina.
Thanks a lot. This was really, really interesting. And you presented a visible management way, actually. But do you think there is a connection to, like lean management or so? And what would the major advantages from that old perspective be?
Yes, that is a very interesting question, because lean is also about developing organizations and visualizing your problem. So it's related to lean in some extent. We have not named it lean. We have not used the word lean specifically because to avoid that, because when we talk about lean, then people get a bit irritated. Yes. Exactly. So that, but exactly, it's visualization, it's understanding your system, and that is what is lean about. So maybe we could sometimes link it with when we see a better situation, then people try to understand it more. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, and I just had one that asked you to change the slide in the Menti, I guess, for so they can answer what they thought about it.
Yes, I should. I have